kind of hard to figure out the zoom. I think this is good. Okay. I don't even know. I don't even want to do the whole like what is up girlfriend thing right now because like honestly this topic kind of fucking sucks. It kind of blows. I said it in a previous video that we're gonna talk about hypnotist Sappho. And I had this big script written out. It was pretty long. Most of it was explaining her back, her past. I'm still 50-50 on whether or not I should go into any amount of depth into it because it's not necessarily worth getting into, because my big thing of making this video isn't to be like, what guys, what Sappho did was really bad. It's like, yeah, no shit. But at the same fucking time, I only want to add this one little detail that I feel like I've seen a lot of fucking videos covering Sappho and they don't touch up on it. And it's not because of like, it's not because the people who made the videos are like stupid or anything, but it's someone who has me as like someone who's studying psychology, me who is like into that subject and taking classes in that subject. I think my knowledge on it helps me come to not a better conclusion, but a different conclusion, where most people would be like, Sappho's just a fucking piece of shit. I think Sappho's way worse than I think most people realize. And it's because I'm into psychology. It allows me a perspective that I think most people don't have. It's not hard to not like Sappho. It's not hard to be like, wow, she's a piece of shit. She's a fucking monster. I'm not saying people are coming to the wrong conclusion. I just think that with my knowledge in psychology, my surface level knowledge in psychology, I think Sappho is way worse. In this video, I kind of want to get into like the degree of offenders, because it's not just like, there isn't just one kind of like pedophile. There isn't one kind of zoophile, right? Spoiler alert, that's what she did. But and for people, because there are some furries who genuinely do not know what the fuck happened with the whole Sappho thing, and there's some people who don't remember or haven't, they're not. I'm only well aware of Sappho's existence because I follow a lot of drama channels and stuff like that, and furry drama and shit like that. Or I don't follow furry drama, but this was a pretty big thing on the internet if you were following the drama / commentary community. This was a pretty fucking big thing that happened last year. Let me give you the rundown. Try to remember what I wrote in my script that I'm not going to be referring to in this video. Sappho. Hypnotist Sappho. That's what she calls herself. She made like a TikTok, YouTube channel thing where she practices hypnosis unprofessionally on VR chat. And it's not to say like unprofessionally like she didn't know what she was doing. She knows what she's fucking doing. Okay, she understands hypnosis and she understands how to work it. She's not necessarily like a practicing hypnosis, but like a hobbyist, I would say. She's definitely a hobbyist. She said that herself. She doesn't have any official degree in psychology, but she was studying it. And I think that's a very important detail that I will bring up later, that she was also studying psychology. And I think that is like a pretty big detail that I think a lot of people just kind of glance over. And again, it's not to say like they're stupid or anything, but me, someone who is studying psychology, you end up learning a lot of things in surface level psychology classes that most people, if you're majoring in psychology, you'll take those classes. You have to take those classes. So general psych, developmental psych, those are the ones that, those are introductory. General psych and developmental psych, which I think is the most important one, which Sappho, I think she was already well into psychology, I think. So she must have taken those classes, and that's a very important thing to bring up. But yeah, did a YouTube channel, hypnosis and shit. A lot of stuff happens in the background I don't want to get into, but if you want like a good coverage of her history and how we got to the point that we're at right now. Turkey Tom made a pretty great video, and I think this other person made a great video. I've completely forgot their name, but they made a pretty great coverage of it, of essentially getting us up to where we're at right now. Because as far as I know, there's no news, Sappho news. That's a good and a bad thing at the same time. It's a good thing that she's not in the news, because usually when she's in the news, it's because she did something fucking horrible, or she said something stupid. But it's also a bad thing because it's like, I'll get into why it's a bad thing, because I think, yeah, I'll get into why it's a bad thing later. That she's not in the news. She ended up coming out with this video on September 11th of all fucking days last year, basically outing herself as a zoophile. And it was that whole like, I'm a zoophile. She was basically like outing her, put it big, massive quotations. She was outing herself as a zoophile, right? And I say put that in big quotations because she was kind of put in a position where she didn't really have a choice. Like, it was either get ahead of the allegations and control the narrative from there as much as you can before the real truth comes out, before the real information comes out, or just let the person who's going to out you, let them write their fucking expose post and then have you try to explain it. So she decided to get ahead of the allegations and make the video basically outing herself as a zoophile, because there was no denying it. She said it herself in the fucking DMs. So there was no denying that. And she tried so hard to fucking like, she tried to load the term zoophile with as much positive like reinforcement as possible. It's like, there's a lot of misconceptions about us. There's people that make a lot of assumptions about us. They try to make us out as the zoo sadists who got exposed back in 2017, which that's a whole nother fucking thing. Awful fucking shit. I would say that whole zoo sadist stuff was worse than Sappho. Those people are definitely worse than Sappho. Not Kiro. She said oh my god, great. Now that I fucking mentioned that, now I kind of have to explain. Fuck me. Goddamn. Kiro, I think the furry community at large should know who Kiro is. Kiro was a fucking big-ass YouTuber. Big-ass furry YouTuber. He was on Shane Dawson. Shane Dawson interviewed him, and then literally like a few months after that interview, this whole Telegram chat log gets fucking leaked, and it's a bunch of zoo sadists talking to each other, and Kiro was on there. Kiro wasn't necessarily a zoo sadist, he was a zoophile. He self-admitted fucked his own dog in those fucking chat rooms, in those chat logs. And there's even videos of it, though. Statute of limitations. Isn't that a great thing? Statute of limitations. So Kiro was one of the few people who managed to escape charges from that Telegram chat being fucking leaked. Because statute of limitations. But he's pretty much semi-disappeared from the internet. He tried to come back earlier this year, but like, to no one's surprise, like it pretty much fell flat. Yeah, but Kiro denied the allegations all the way through. But Sappho says that she's not as bad as Kiro. She's actually worse than Kiro, because all Kiro did was fuck his own dog, right? Which is fucking like, it's evil. It's don't misunderstand me. That's evil. You're an evil piece of shit for doing that. But to sit there and for someone like Sappho to say she's better than Kiro, she's way fucking worse than Kiro. Okay, Kiro fucked his dog and fantasized about like fucking deer corpses or some shit. You know, like creepy, insane, violent person to take advantage of an animal like that. But we'll get into Sappho's sins in a bit. But She outed herself as a zoophile. She said that she's more attracted to animals than she is to human beings, and so she has a relationship, and she has like German shepherds, and she preferred German shepherds, so it's heavily implied that she fucks her dog or some shit. And that whole thing happens. The internet goes crazy. They're just like, this bitch really just came out and admitted to fucking her dog, essentially. And we've heard something like that happen before with the whole, like, if you remember the Leafy saga, there was like a dog fucker girl in that whole thing. So it's not necessarily anything new, but it's new in the sense that, like, this unprovoked confession, essentially, you know, what appeared to be unprovoked was actually provoked. But later down the line, skipping through a lot of shit, she creates this organization called Zeta International. It was basically like a pedophile, or not a pedophile, zoophile. What's the difference? You know, a zoophile advocacy group, and that they were gonna make real change. They weren't even legitimately established until it got disbanded, because all the zoophiles in the group couldn't agree on whether or not they should allow zoo sadists in the group, which I don't know, if you don't know what that term implies, it means you like to sexually torture animals, like actually, like kill and sexually torture animals. They could not decide if they wanted those people in the group, so they disbanded. Really goes to show who you're really fucking dealing with, right? So that whole organization disbanded, and then I think after that, it was either after that or before that, she got outed talking to fucking minors and stuff like that, and ERPing with them. And there's actual, she actually did these things. She actually, there's video. You can't watch the video. You shouldn't go looking for the video because it's technically child, right? But she was ERPing with a minor in VR chat. She did that several times, and it appeared that she was absolutely grooming the minors in her fan base to her own, for her own sexual gratification. And that was a whole thing that happened. And then she denied it. She said, "No, I'm not a pedophile. That stuff's stupid, blah blah blah." And then like a few months later, she's like, "Okay, yeah, I am a pedophile. You guys just don't understand me, blah blah blah." And it's like, yeah, we Sappho, yeah, we knew. Like, I don't know why you think like just whole. So essentially, we've established she's a zoophile, pedophile person, and that's why I think she's worse than Kuro, because at least Kuro's sins stop at fucking animals. Sappho fucked with kids, okay? And for me personally, the personal perspective, I think both. I think doing both sexually exploiting animals and sexually exploiting kids, I think those are equal. I think those are equal sins. I think if you fuck with animals like that, you're just as evil as a fucking pedophile. Just as evil. I see the same fucking thing. And it's not to say like I'm a vegan or anything, right? I think there are ethical ways to consume animals, to consume meat. I think there are ethical ways to do it. The Native Americans did it. I really do appreciate, and I think the way the Native Americans did it is honorable and noble and ethical. I think the way they did it is completely like that. They didn't take too much. They only took what they needed, right? I don't like the industrialization of the meat industry. I hate that. I think it's cruel. I think it's not fair to the animals. I think if we want to ethically consume animals and kill animals, that every single bit of it should be used, and the animal should only be killed when it's old age. When it's old age, or like it's crippled or some shit and it can't walk anymore, and you kind of have to put it out of its misery or something like that, right? You know, like I think those are the only times. Also, I'm perfectly for hunting. I think hunting is fair game. And it's kind of hard to deconstruct the whole industrialization of the meat industry, like with a snap of the fingers. So I understand that that's probably not going to go away, but I think there is an ethical way to consume meat. So it's not to say like I'm a vegan or anything, but I think it's a different context. When you take in an animal as a pet, you're essentially making a promise to it. It's like you are, because when people think pet, they think, oh, it's like a toy. Maybe back in the 1950s or something like that, that's how people viewed pets. But I think the context nowadays is so much more different for pets. It's like when you take in a pet, that's essentially a family. That pet is essentially part of your family now, and you are making a promise to it. It's like, I'm gonna take care of you, I'm gonna nourish you, and I'm going to protect you, right? And zoophiles take advantage of that. They don't see their animals as pets. They don't see them as part of family. They see them as like they are the ones who see them as a toy, meant to be fucked with, meant to be played with. It's like, oh, Fido's humping my leg. That means green means go. That gives me the go to do whatever the fuck I want with it. It's like, no, you fucking crazy bitch. Like if a child started humping your leg or some shit, or if a child started like scratching his fucking dick or some shit, does that mean it's okay to then, like, no, it doesn't. So, and that's an argument Sappho kind of used, where it's like, I could tell when my animal is in the mood, and I could tell my animal really wants it. So who am I to deny that? That's what Sappho said. I think she either said that about the animals or she said that about the children. Who fucking knows? Is there honestly a fucking difference, right? Again. But yeah, that's essentially, she made that argument. She's like, who am I to deny that pleasure? And it's like, well, because they're not fucking ready. Not only that, number one, and number two, you as an adult being in a position that you are in, you're taking advantage of it. And this is something that you learn in developmental psychology. You learn about the mental capacity of people. And this is something that I don't think the layman understands necessarily, like how important it is, like synapses and brain development, how integral that is to your intellectual capacity. That there are, like, to put into an example, you take something like a baby, you take something like a child, or a baby, let's say. They have something called, it's at the tip of my tongue. So babies lack a thing called object permanence. So you know when you do like the whole like peekaboo, peekaboo, and the baby starts laughing and stuff like that? When you do this, the baby essentially sees a blank face. They literally cannot fathom your face existing anymore. Like when you do this, the baby thinks your face disappears, right? Which is why they give that weird like, huh? Oh? Like they give that kind of face, like, where did it go? What happened? Or you do like got your nose or something like that. You know, they laugh and giggle because like they don't understand. Because they don't understand, like, you don't actually have their nose. Like that's how, and it grows up to the point where it's like, then you develop object permanence. And then like, because if you ever notice like a baby, like its toy gets flung and it falls behind the couch, the baby literally thinks that object doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't realize that just go behind the couch, it's still there. They literally do not realize the object still exists. They think the object has disappeared forever. And it just really goes to show how crucial the developmental process is. You know, like the differences between the stages of development, very fucking important to recognize. And children and teenagers, they literally lack the brain capacity to make long-term decisions. If you take someone like a 13-year-old and you compare it to someone like, I want to say like a 16-year-old, the 3-year age difference might not seem a lot. It's a big fucking difference. In terms of brain development, in terms of hormones, in terms of the amount of hormones that are going through the body, in terms of life experience, there's a big fucking difference. Like for me, because I'm an adult now, 3-year difference, I can somewhat see a difference between, like, if you were to take, like, let's see, like what, 18-year-old me, that's almost like a 3-year age difference versus 21-year-old me. I could kind of see a difference. You know, there were a lot of things that happened in between there, but if you took like 18-year-old me and compared it to 16-year-old me or 13-year-old me, big fucking difference, huge difference, right? And that has a lot to do with like mental capacity, brain capacity, you know, intellectual capacity. That has a lot to do with that. And there's a lot of development that goes on in between those ages of the teen years and stuff like that. So for the layman, it might seem like 18 is an arbitrary number to decide that's the age of consent. It's not really that arbitrary, because I think roughly around 18. Now, not all 18-year-olds can consent, There are definitely some who lack the brain capacity, who can't consent, and they still need and require a parent or guardian to make decisions for them because they literally cannot do it themselves. You know, it's not to say like, oh, 18, you can consent. It's like not all the fucking time. You know, consent to the layman might seem like an arbitrary thing, but it's not. There's a lot of factors that go into what can consent, and I've developed these three things because I haven't necessarily looked into like articles and stuff like that. This is me like in the process of thinking about this kind of stuff for years and years and years. And I have like okay, so this might be personal, but I had some fucked up shit happen to me as a kid, and it really changed who I am as a person. So I became like obsessed of like what drives people to do those kinds of things to other people. Why is it necessarily wrong, you know, that happened to me? And that's what really drove me into psychology was that aspect of like paraphilias and what drives someone to do those kinds of things to other people, you know, and why is it that people think it's okay, and why is it exactly that it's wrong? And I've devised these like three or four criteria of consent, and that is intellectual capacity, power dynamics, and intellectual capacity, brain capacity, and consciousness. So like someone who's unconscious can't consent, right? Because there's no brain activity going on there. Even if they have the intellectual capacity to consent, their brain isn't operating, so they're not conscious. They're like passed out, asleep, drunk. They're not at that level of consciousness to consent. So there's that thing. Then there's also power dynamics, which just because there's like a large power dynamic difference, that doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't consenting. But let's say if someone of like a position of authority, like an adult, looking down upon someone who is a kid, someone who's socially pressured to follow people of authority, that person, if they were to make advances, what is going on with my frames? If they were to make advances on that person of little to no authority, that would be like almost taking advantage of that. And I would say like you're not necessarily getting their consent, even though they might say yes, even though they might be totally for it. There's that background hierarchical social influence that's pressuring that person to say yes, even though they don't necessarily mean it, or they don't understand the consequences of them saying yes. And that also brings me to intellectual capacity. The big thing that is the reason why I think kids can't consent, largely speaking, and also animals. Animals simply do not meet the intellectual threshold to consent to something like that. They can't. Okay? Just because Fido is humping your leg, that doesn't instantly mean that, oh, he's in the mood, and who am I to deny that? Like, no. Okay? If you are with a baby and you're changing a baby's diaper and it starts touching its dick, okay? Because babies do that for sexual stimulation. There are early, you know, if you take developmental psychology, you'll learn that there are babies do have some sort of like sexual expression. Now, it's not necessarily say they have a sexuality or anything. That develops later on during puberty and stuff like that. But there are early signs of like sexual stimulation and stuff like that. The baby is touching its dick because it feels good. Okay, that's just a reality. So if a baby were to start doing that, there's like, well, who am I to deny? No. That's ridiculous. That's stupid, right? So, but animals, literally, the smartest animals on the planet right now have the intellectual capacity of a toddler. So if it's okay, and this is also why there's a lot of crossover between zoophiles and pedophiles too, because if they think animals can consent, despite even the smartest animals only having the intellectual capacity of a toddler, right? What's stopping them from doing it with a kid, right? Nothing, literally nothing. That's why there's a lot of crossover with that. With those two paraphilias, is that they don't necessarily see anything wrong with literally taking advantage of something that's literally taking advantage of a being that simply isn't that level of consciousness, isn't at that level of intellectual capacity. And it's not to say that it's impossible for children to have a high intellectual capacity. There have been kids who have taken IQ tests, and they've been studied, and they've shown to have the intellectual capacity of an adult. There are teenagers out there, very fucking smart, and they have the intellectual capacity of adult. But you also have those other levels of conscientiousness, which also takes into account experience. You also have that on top of the power dynamics that prevent anybody from touching that kid. And even so, if that kid was genuinely smart as an adult, that kid would understand it's a bad idea for them to engage with an adult in that sort of way, because they could get because of two things. They could get taken advantage of because they are physically fucking weaker and they don't have the experience, and they might not necessarily know. Because just because they're smart, that doesn't mean that they're not naive. They can still have like levels of naivety to them, and trusting positions of authority and stuff like that. They can still be manipulated, right? They can still be manipulated. Just because you're smart, that doesn't mean you're like incapable of being manipulated. You can still be manipulated. So even a kid who's as smart as an adult, they would understand it's a stupid decision to engage with adults in that sort of way, right? So it really leaves you the option of like, what kind of kids are the people, what kind of kids are the type of kids to interact with adults in that sort of way. It's kids who are desperate for attention. It's kids who are desperate, who might not have a stable household, who might not be getting a lot of affection from their parents, whether or not that's the parent neglecting the child, or the parent is like working their fucking ass off, and they don't necessarily have the time to bond with their kids, so their kid is reaching out to other communities to get that sort of attention and affection. You know, in the reality, the people that predators decide to prey on are vulnerable populations, are vulnerable people. A pedophile would never go for a kid who's genuinely smart, genuinely intelligent, because that kid would be like, fuck off, I don't want anything to do, you're creepy, get out of here, like I don't want anything to do with you. A smart kid would say that. A kid who's genuinely smart, as smart as an adult, they would never do that kind of shit. They would literally never do it, because logically, if they have the intelligence of an adult, they would come to the conclusions like, that's a stupid decision. Why would I do that? Why would I engage with an adult like that? And that's one reason. And a second reason is because the kid is aware, like, hey, I understand you might like me, and I might like you, but I don't want to get you in trouble, so we can't do this. We can't engage in this sort of thing. And the kid might be the one making the right decision in that circumstance, and the adult is kind of left to they have to agree, right? Like, so even in a circumstance where the kid is smart and they like the person and they trust the person, and the person that they likes them back and trusts them, even in a circumstance like that, the ultimate decision, the ultimate reality is that it's never okay. It's never okay under any circumstance to get with a kid. Under literally no circumstances it's okay. Fuck, this quest is like melting my face right now. Which then leads me to why I think Sappho is worse, and this is where I'm going to talk about different levels of offenders. When people hear pedophile, they usually think of a greasy, old, perverted, gray-haired man who might have a smoker's voice or something like that and hangs around a fucking playground. That's almost hard. That's almost never true. It's almost never true. I watch a lot of fucking channels that catch pedophiles and stuff like that. Most pedophiles that I have seen being caught are like people who are like, they have a stable living, they're married, and they have some sort of like, it's not like they're of low social standing. It's usually like young adults to like 30-year-old people that are doing that kind of shit. And a lot of the times they will say it's their first time, which is kind of iffy, kind of 50-50. You know, it's usually never true that it's their first time. They usually say that just to get away with it, or just to lessen the cognitive load of their, you know, their shame, I guess, is to lie and try to convince other people, no, it's my first time. But a lot of those people, but again, a lot of those people that are being caught, it might not be their first time, but it also might not be their 40th time or their 50th time. It's not to say like they're constantly offending every chance they get. It's usually easy to recognize on those channels that catch pedophiles and stuff like that. It's usually easy to recognize who those kinds of people are, because 9 times out of 10, when they get caught the first time, they're caught talking to like several fucking decoys, like several other different decoy accounts, just like 10, 20, 30. I've even heard like the UK people. There's like people that I watch in the UK that catch pedophiles as well. They are constantly interacting with other pedophile catching groups, and whenever they're on a live stream catching other people, it's like, yep, we got him here, we got him here, we got him here, we got him here. He's talking to this one. Those are the ones that you see that are like multiple of those are the people with pedophilic disorder, right? Like pedophilia, the paraphilia, right? But most people don't typically fit that because they're one-time offenders, provably, like, or not provably, but like we have to assume that they're only a one-time offender because we don't know of any other instance, and they're only caught talking to one decoy account. Those are what we call opportunistic offenders, and those are people that aren't necessarily a pedophile, but it's usually people. Opportunistic offenders are usually people who have a insanely high sex drive, an insanely high libido level, and they take any opportunity that presents itself to gain sexual gratification. And even if it's a kid, they do not care. They'll take it anyways, right? Those are most offenders. I feel most offenders are opportunistic offenders, and they're only seizing the opportunity. It's not necessarily they have an attraction to the kid, but it's that they see the opportunity to gain sexual gratification and they say fuck it, and they go with it anyways. Then you have people who are actually pedophiles. Like, they could be diagnosed as that because they have a repeated, consistent attraction to minors, and they keep pursuing minors constantly. And then those are the people that you see are hitting up multiple decoy accounts, hitting up multiple minors, right? Hitting up multiple minors, interacting with multiple minors, right? They're not one-time offenders, or they usually within like a month or two they're talking to multiple decoy accounts and stuff like that. You know, those are the people who actually have pedophilia. And there is a difference. Because the opportunistic offenders, I think, can be helped to an extent. There is medicine out there that can chemically lower their libido levels to a point where they could control it, and they could it's almost like drugs. It's almost like drugs. Libido and sex drive, it's almost like drugs, right? If you have a high libido level, it's almost like having a high craving for drugs. And you see tweakers like that out on the fucking streets and stuff like that, and they say, I need my fix, and they start they're tweaking out, right? And it's kind of like that for those opportunistic offenders. But if you give them a medicine that lowers their libido, lowers their drive to gain sexual gratification, I think those people can be, and if they have to consistently take it, because libido is something that is biological. It's something that develops within you, right? Everyone has different libido levels. No one has the same libido. Men tend to have higher libido levels, and women tend to have lower libido levels. But generally, everyone is like, it's like a spectrum. No, there's not one. There are men with lower libido levels than some women, right? That can happen. If you can lower the sex drives, I think those people can be helped. I think now, don't necessarily let them around kids or anything, right? Like, you should be like, they should be practicing, like, take yourself out of positions where there can be kids. You know, generally try to avoid situations where you're going to be around a kid, especially alone. Generally avoid that. And if they could do that and take their medicine, they could find a place back in society to some extent. And the reason why I'm so confident in that is because I've seen the studies of like people on those like libido reducing medicines. It's essentially called chemical castration. It takes the recidivism rate for sex crimes from like 42% or something, like nearly a coin toss, right? 42%. So they have a 42% chance of being reconvicted for the same crime, or not the same exact crime, because you can't be tried for the same crime twice, but for a similar crime, it takes it from 42 down all the way to like literally 2%. Like, that's an insane fucking drop. That's an insane fucking drop. Why are my frames dying? What the fuck? So those are your different levels of offenders. You have some people who actually have legitimately have pedophilia, and then you have people who are just opportunistic offenders. And I think people are mostly used to opportunistic offenders, but they still kind of treat them the same as like pedophiles. It's like, no. There's a difference. There's an actual difference. Some of these people can be helped. These people who have pedophilia, it's kind of 50-50 on whether or not they can be fucking helped. Because a lot of the times, their paraphilia can be so insatiable, their desire can be so insatiable, where they could literally just say like, I'm just gonna move somewhere else and stop taking this medicine, and they'll go right back to offending. That has happened a few times, from what I've seen, and that's where you get your 2% of offenders. Now I'm gonna talk about Sappho and where I think she's at. Like I said before, she was talking to multiple minors. She literally had this like cabal, this fan base, where she was literally grooming minors into being zoophiles, into accepting that kind of behavior and encouraging that kind of behavior. She is definitely a pedophile. Like, she is up there. She's not an opportunistic offender at all. If Sappho was an opportunistic offender, she wouldn't need to go for kids. She has some amount of fame in the furry fandom, and she has that like sort of like dommy mommy voice. There's tons of fucking older straight men who are super into that they'll want to be with her. She doesn't need to go for dogs. She doesn't need to go for kids. If she was genuinely like an opportunistic offender, she would have like multiple like of age partners in her life or something like that. But she didn't. She constantly went for kids. She constantly went for animals, right? So much so where she literally got 2 German shepherds, like her preferred species. Fucking disturbing, right? But she has that, and she also like she's definitely up there. But on top of that, what makes her worse isn't being a pedophile, right? And a zoophile, which are virtually the same thing. It's not that. It's literally the fact that she's studying psychology. So it's not like she's unaware of her illness. It's not like she's unaware of her disorder, of her paraphilia, and how it's influencing her. She is very, very aware of her disorder. She is very aware of it. And on top of that, she's also aware of why she shouldn't be fucking with kids, why she shouldn't be fucking with animals. Because this, like, again, with like intellectual capacity, mental capacity, the brain development, she should have fucking learned that in developmental psychology. She should have learned that. She should have learned that children literally they do not possess the intellectual capacity to process long-term decision making. The average kid cannot do that. The average 13-year-old, 14-year-old, 15-year-old, maybe sometimes even 16-year-old, they can't process that kind of shit. They literally cannot fathom it. When you ask a kid at 13 years old, what do you want to do with your life? What kind of career do you want to get into? They usually say something insanely naive, like, I want to be an astronaut, or I want to be a musician, or something like that. Right? Which is like, they say that so confidently, yet and you ask them, it's like, okay, do you understand how hard it's going to be to get into that career? I don't think the average 13-year-old really can fathom how difficult and how competitive those fields are. Like being an astronaut and being like a musician. Like, those fields are insanely fucking competitive and insanely fucking grueling. I have several musicians in my family, right? And on top of that, I think it can be, to some extent, be compared to like other art fields that I am aware of, that I am familiar with. It's very hard to make a successful living doing anything art related, right? Because it's very difficult, and it can be very grueling. And I don't think 13-year-olds necessarily realize that. They probably think, I'll make paintings and people will just buy them and I'll be able to get by. It's like, no. It ain't like that. It ain't like that, Chief. And it doesn't matter how much you tell them, like they still want to pursue it up to the point where they get around their college age years and they're like, oh fuck, wait, oh wait, this doesn't sound like too smart of an idea anymore, right? And the only people that necessarily stick around for that are the people that are confident in their art skills and stuff like that. And they think I recognize that this is going to be a bitch and I'm absolutely ready for it, and good for those people, right? But yeah, like Sappho should know, because she has said she's taken psychology courses. Granted, it's online schooling, but she's taking psychology courses and she wants to be a practicing hypnotist. So she has to have, at this point, taken developmental psychology. And the fact that she still doesn't realize that what she's doing is fucking abhorrent, still doesn't realize is it sounds so improbable. It sounds so insanely improbable that she literally taking these classes, understanding how the brain develops over the years, that she still doesn't understand. It's like, kids literally, they cannot make long-term decisions. They literally cannot. I think that's about it. I could go into more, but I don't want to make this video any longer than it already is. That is essentially why I think Sappho is way fucking worse than anybody necessarily realizes. There's so much more happening in the background that people realize. But again, if you want to know more information about the whole Sappho thing, check out these two videos. Right, check out those two videos. Those two videos are pretty good at covering her history. If you want something more entertaining, go to Turkey Tom's video. Turkey Tom is usually good at making these like documentary style things. And this person over here, I think theirs is more up to date, but I don't know. I found it less entertaining. If that doesn't matter for you, definitely choose this video. This video is more informative. That's essentially it. Next video, I will be revisiting why kids shouldn't be playing VR chat. I will be revisiting that, because from the troll, from the last anti-trolling video, that one dude who interrupted me in my fucking argument with that, right? That one dude who like interrupted me, it honestly triggered me. Like I felt like, if you watch the video and you saw the little captions that I put in between, you understand, like, fuck, I should have realized that. Like, dude, you're literally saying, I'm going to go on a tangent, but real quick, it's like, dude, you're literally saying that this game is made for kids, yet we're standing in a fucking Hooters with the stripper pole and alcohol in the background. Like, I really wish I would have realized that. Is it really, this is a game for, this fucking map has been around for a long ass fucking time, and VR chat has done literally nothing about it. It's almost as if it's not made for kids. You fucking dipshit. Anyways, I'll get into that when I write the script for that, because that I definitely want to have it more structured than this. But yeah, anyways, see you guys later. Like, subscribe, do the thing, right? You know, because that genuinely helps the channel.